This week on the show, ESL Pro League enters its final weeks, CEVO finals are right around the corner, and Freakazoid is back in action. I'm Jack Westerman, joined by Jason Moses O'Toole, and you're watching PopFlash. This week's clip is Tyloo versus SK Gaming at the 2011 World Cyber Games, where Savage picks up a pistol ace in the round of 16. Unfortunately, SK Gaming would defeat Tyloo 2-1, advancing to the semi-final. However, they were unable to defeat ESC in the grand final. Our first story this week is ESL's Pro League, which of course is an online league culminating in LAN finals at the end of May. Now, Jason, you've been talking about ESL Pro League for a long, well, I guess every single week for the last few weeks, right? We've talked about the European League, we've talked about the North American League on PopFlash in weeks past, but now we're literally reaching the end of the season. The top 4 European teams are locked, and just to caveat to viewers at home, the North Americans are still playing. So the figures you see for the North American teams may yet change. So, Jason, as we have a look at the European teams, we'll see NiP, Astralis, Fnatic, and G2 up at the top. We got Na'Vi, or Dignitas, FaZe, all those guys not quite making the cut. Given that the ink is pretty much dry on the European season here, what did you make of these European teams throughout the course of the season?
I mean, the biggest one, obviously, is the resurgence of NIP, how good they've been throughout the season. That's been really cool. And then it just gets, and the question was always, will it get validated at any point by their LAN performance? Because, they had an okay Katowice where they looked better, but they didn't really accomplish anything. The Major, they couldn't use Pit, and even if they're starting 5. And then now that they've won Malmo, it's, watching them do that over Na'Vi was a sick event to win, and it's also just kind of the statement of, yeah, this NiP that we've seen online for the past season is the real deal. Is going to be a very scary team in 2016. So that's pretty awesome. Also, I mean, it's a bummer that Na'Vi has as many issues that they do online because they're one of the best teams on LAN, obviously.
Yeah.
And then it just gets highlighted by the fact that they forgot to send in their vetoes for this last week for their deciding matches to qualify, so they had to play Cash, which is a map that they've been consistently banning for years. So that kind of knocked them out of contention for the Pro League finals. So that's a bummer for those guys. But the European, even in the North American, I mean, there's been some very up and down teams we normally see flirting towards the top that are really, really struggling to make it. VIRTUS.PRO is the obvious one. Envy's there as well. So I mean, these, some of these teams that really, really struggle.
You talked about 2 teams there that I want to go into a bit more detail on. So I guess NiP first off the bat and VIRTUS.PRO. Ninjas in Pajamas, given that they won Malmo, whatever that was, a week or 2 ago, and they look to be in good form, are you expecting big things at the LAN in that case? Can they carry the form over?
Yeah, I think they've got to be, to be honest with you, one of the favorites to win it. After that, I mean, that performance in Malmo was so sick. It was so cool to see, and just the resurgence of that squad with the players we know they have, and everyone getting to a level that we didn't see them at in the last year, and then also the new tactical approach, which is fitting perfectly into the current style. I think they're going to be probably one of the favorites to win that. Aside from obviously Luminosity would be another one on the North American side of things.
Okay, the second team we should talk about is VIRTUS.PRO. As you said, they've completely bombed out of this season, right? They finished 3 for 17. Even for them, with their kind of up and down streak they had at the start of this year, mainly down, this is an abysmal performance, and it looks, well, they're pretty much guaranteed to drop out of Pro League next season, right? Do you think there was a point in the season where they pretty much just gave up?
No, because, I mean, VIRTUS.PRO, they don't necessarily always put their 100% focus into some online leagues. They're definitely that team that uses the online for practice to gain momentum. I don't think they ever actually gave up. I think it was a struggle for them at the beginning of the year, and I think it got to the point where they're just like, we need to use these online matches to find ways to get out of the slump or to perform enough to figure things out enough so that when we go to events, I mean, their focus has always been the LAN tournaments. So and we even saw they played much better at events against top tier competition than they did in Pro League. I mean, Pro League, they were losing to everybody, and then they go to these LANs and they're competing for some really good spots, getting out of groups, competing very, very strong against certain teams. Got to the playoffs of the major. So it's it's just an interesting situation with those guys. The difference you see between their online performance and their LAN performance. But I don't think they, if they're still last place, which I think they are, I mean,
Yeah.
they're not going to get automatically relegated, at least, because we did have those season changes to add 2 more teams to each division next year. So they'll play a relegation match, but they won't be automatically relegated. And it would be insane if they actually lost that and got relegated down to Premier. I don't see it happening. I don't know who they'd play in the Premier Division of Europe, but that would be a travesty, for sure.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed for Virtus.Pro. There may still be life in them yet. Just quickly, before we jump over and take a look at the North American teams, these 4 teams going to the LAN, NIP, Astralis, Fnatic, G2. I guess we expect to see a Fnatic resurgence, or is that a little cocky to say these days?
I don't. Not without Olaf. They haven't even looked that great, and I know they're. I mean, it's kind of cool what they're doing is giving some younger players they found in like FPL and in like professional games, or professional pugs and professional just gathers and everything. They're giving those guys chances, which is really cool. But I don't expect Fnatic to win Pro League LAN. I don't expect them to do particularly that great either. I mean, they could do good. Obviously, they have the talent for it, but I don't expect to see it. I haven't seen anything about their online play without Olaf that gives me a lot of confidence in them going into this LAN.
All right, well, let's jump over and take a look at the North American standings as well. So up here at the top, we've got Luminosity, Optic, Cloud9, and Liquid in the qualification spots at the time. For the time being. Again, these may still change. The tournament is still ongoing as we record PopFlash. So, Jason, just straight off the bat, Luminosity are at the top. They're the major winners. Not so hot in Malmo, but generally speaking, a pretty, well, arguably the best team in North America. Is this unexpected that we see them at the top of the standings here?
No, not at all. Yeah, no, it's just not. They're easily the best team in the North American region. Not a North American team, obviously, but in that region, they certainly are dominant and by far the best. And I even think that they win the major and they go to Malmo and they get knocked out in group stage. I actually don't take anything away from them for that. I think the major being so close with Malmo, maybe that hurt them a little bit, but I think the major is just too big of a win for Malmo to discredit them wholeheartedly. I mean, you do have to sit there and say, they're not like this dominant force, and even they didn't look like that at the major despite winning it, even winning big over Navi on the second map. But I mean, they just narrowly beat Liquid, so they're not some dominant team, but they're certainly one of the favorites to win Pro League.
And 2 other teams that, well, one of which isn't a North American team either. Renegades, of course, were playing in Pro League this season. But also Logic Gaming. I think these 2 teams, so Renegades, at the time of recording, Renegades are 11 for 9. Logic Gaming is 5 for 15. I think we would have expected better of these as well, right?
Yeah, Renegades maybe not. Renegades, I mean, they wasn't a team that we expected to come in and just blow the roof off the division or the region. But we figured they'd be down the stretch fighting for a playoff spot, and they were up until about last week. So it's a little bit of a bummer they didn't make it this far. I mean, they lost some crucial matches. I think it was on Saturday or Thursday. They lost a couple games that pretty much knocked them out of contention, but we knew they'd be fighting for one of those spots at the end. And this is just the first season they've been involved in Pro League, so as they stick around and as they get more experience, I think we'll see them improve. They have too many talented players not to be competing for playoff spots. CLG is just like, I mean, this is just standard CLG, isn't it? It's just like up and down. You don't know, they go through their hot streak at the major, get to the quarterfinals, and then they kind of dip down very, very much. It's just the very high highs, the very low lows. I also think part of it as well with CLG is that especially for the second half of the season, everything after the major essentially is PETA, their coach, who's also their in-game leader, has not been back in the States yet. He's getting some visa paperwork done over in Sweden, I believe. So he hasn't been here, and I think you can really kind of tell when you watch them play in the second half of the season that they're missing that presence.
And one last team we should talk about before we jump on to the next topic is Team Liquid. They've had a bit of change since the last major, I think it's fair to say. Simple is, he's jumped ship. I think Adren's talking about coming back in. What's your feeling about this roster given those changes, Jason?
I understand why they let Simple kind of fade off and go home and everything like that, just because I know from talking to the players, the team environment wasn't very good.
Yeah.
A lot of the players didn't, it was just a very negative place to be a player with the kind of personality that Simple has, which we all kind of knew and expected to a certain extent. The Adren situation is more intriguing to me because Yeah, I mean, he was cut, and now they're bringing him back because he had a good performance at the major. But that's
Yeah.
like one event where he had a good performance, and there was countless where he didn't have a good one. I mean, if he can, obviously, they're running the gamble that they're going to have the Adren that was at the major more often than not, right? But I mean, they're the issues that I see in Liquid at the moment actually extend much further than Adren and Simple because the issue with them is they really don't have a star player on this team without Simple. So that's a little bit scary, just in the sense that Hiko's that star player, but he's also like a more passive. He's not the in-game leader as well. Likes to do his lurking, as we all know. So it's hard for him to initiate good rounds from that role as a star player. And then the other guy that you'd expect to come up is Nitro, who we've been talking about for almost a year and a half, 2 years,
Yeah.
is saying this guy's poised to break out and be a star. Well, he hasn't done it yet, and at a certain point, you kind of start running out and saying, okay, well, we can no longer hype this guy up based on his potential. And then Elige is the secondary one, and these guys are both just very up and down, and they never seem to be able to consistently reach that star level where we've seen them both carry through games to be able to make them win against tier 1 opponents, but it doesn't happen often enough that they can rely on it. So that's kind of the big issue. Simple was that star, and even he wasn't that reliable. He was just another person in there that could just go off and single-handedly win you a game. So they need to find some way, especially now that they don't have Simple, to get players like Nitro, Elige. Kusta needs to develop a little bit more and a little bit more quickly. But Nitro and Elige really need to find some consistency.
Simple was a star player, and his highest highs were phenomenal, but also a very toxic one, as you alluded to. Is it worth having such a highly skilled player on your team if he's going to make life miserable for everybody else? Is it a viable trade-off?
I mean, that's the conversation they had, right? When they were trying to figure that out, that was kind of the big argument. And I know there's, Richard Lewis just released his Daily Dot article that highlighted that, where there was a split within the team, where it was essentially, it was Hiko and it was the coach James, who's also now gone.
Yeah.
Those are the two that wanted to keep Simple. It was the other 3-4 people, Adren. Adren, Elige, Nitro, Kusta, those guys didn't want to play with him. So that was kind of the trade-off they're making, with James and Hiko saying it's better to deal with the attitude and find ways to be effective even despite that, because he's so skilled. Personally, and just from my own experience, I would much rather have the lesser skilled player who's better to work with, because you can raise the collective efficiency and ability of the team if you have 5 people who are willing to work on it, and that includes themselves individually. And that's kind of how I found my success in Counter-Strike. So I think it would vary on who you ask and what kind of angle they look at the game of Counter-Strike with. But for me personally, I would agree with their decision to get rid of Simple. And it's going to work fine if they get the Adren that was at the major. If Kusta continues to develop, and if Nitro and Elige find ways to be consistently effective day in and day out. And that's a lot of ifs.
Our second story this week is the CEVO Gfinity Professional Season 9 LAN Finals. Bit of a mouthful. Taking place in London, England, in about a week's time. So, 8 teams invited to this event. We've got VIRTUS.PRO, who of course were the Season 8 champions. We've got 2 direct invites, Tempo Storm and Na'Vi, though Na'Vi have since dropped out. 3 teams from the North American qualifier, Optic, Selfless and Splice, and 2 from Europe. So, Dignitas and Hellraisers. And of course, it's, I believe, 125k LAN, and there are $55,000 up for grab in first place. Jason, strange selection of teams here. Not the kind of list you'd expect for 125k LAN. I think that's fair to say.
No, yeah, no, it absolutely is. But I think part of it is just, I mean, you look at teams like Na'Vi. I mean, they even got a direct invite, and they still dropped out. Just there's so many events going on. There's a lot of fatigue, and we just got through a particularly stressful period, where it was the major. And then it was Malmo, a week or 2 later. So I mean, there's been a lot of, some of these teams have just been playing so incredibly much this year. Dating back to even some of the other events like Barcelona earlier in the year. So it makes sense that teams are going to drop out. I know Star Ladder's also coming up, and then E-League begins, where teams are going to have to be in Atlanta for weeks on time. So I mean, obviously you can see some of these teams are trying to take as much time off as they possibly can during the schedule.
Given the caliber of opponents here, I mean, we're looking Hellraisers, Optic, Selfless, Splice. Do you think if Na'Vi had stayed in this tournament, it would have been an easy win for them?
I don't think it would have been easy, but I think I mean, they definitely would have been the overwhelming favorites.
Mm.
But I think you look at VIRTUS.PRO, who's never going to be an easy opponent,
Yeah.
no matter what shape they've been in online. I think every team in Europe, every pro team in Europe knows never to count them out. Tempo Storm has given Navi challenges at Katowice, and then Dignitas as well. I mean, if they continue to play to a better level, then they can also be a scary team. So I mean, obviously I'm not putting too much stock in the North American teams, but teams like VP and Tempo Storm have definitely able to compete with Navi.
Yeah, just on Tempo Storm very quickly. So this is their second international outing since Katowice. They played at Malmö a week or two ago. Didn't fare particularly great there. What are you looking for them in particular to improve on this time around?
They are kind of where Luminosity was, just a while back last year, where Luminosity was this a team that would struggle to win BO3s, but can definitely upset in BO1s. I mean, they're always very scary for that one map victory. They just haven't quite figured out how to win a full series yet.
Yeah.
But they are talented, but they are also one of those cases where their stars, who are performing well, sometimes they kind of fade off a little bit. So they're just a team in growth right now, and they're in a good spot. I mean, they've had great improvement. I think they're a big challenge. I think in the North American scene, if they were in Pro League, I think they'd be competing for one of these playoff spots. And they're also one of those teams that's just extremely hungry because they've been looked over for invites to certain leagues. I think it was ECS looked them over, and so did E-League, I believe.
Yeah.
They weren't invited to this. They were very vocal about the fact that they felt that was very much an insult. So this is a hungry team that's going to put in a lot of work. They just have to figure out how to complete the series.
If you had to put your skins on it, who would your top three be here?
Well, I mean, without knowing who the eighth team is going to be, because Navi dropped out.
Of course, yeah.
Just from the list I'm looking at now, VIRTUS.PRO, Tempo Storm, and probably Dignitas. I think those are the big three names, and that. I mean, the cool thing is, it's going to be really interesting. Not so much, I'm not so much interested in watching Splice play, and that's no offense to them. I want to see Optic and Selfless go at it, because Selfless is a team that once Kusta left, everyone kind of thought they were done and dusted, and they have a chance tonight to qualify for the Pro League finals. From the North American region. Optic as well has Mixwell, and they're competing for a playoff spot tonight. So, I mean, these are two teams up towards the top this whole season that have some pretty interesting storylines. So I am interested to see how they're going to play, not only on LAN, but on LAN against, the Tier 1 competition. See exactly where they're at. It's going to test their chops. And if either one of those teams actually makes the finals, then it'll be good experience to go right back to Austin. Actually, that's actually crazy to think about. These three teams, Optics, Splice, and Selfless, are going to have an insane schedule because they're in UK for Gfinity, and then they fly back to Austin, where they have DreamHack Austin, and then they fly right back to UK for Pro League finals if they qualify. So that's a little bit of a kick in the dick. That'll be interesting to see how they manage all that, because God knows I would be miserable.
Last but not least, I've got some quickfire questions for you, Jason. So, quick as you can, give me your thoughts on the following news stories from the week. First off the bat, Freakazoid is standing in for Splice. We just talked about them at DreamHack Austin.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a player they know exactly what they're going to get. They're just, it's just one of those guys you can point in the direction and you can say, go frag, and see what he gets you. And there's already been rumors linking Freakazoid to Echo Fox, where he can join up with Sean, one of his ex-teammates. So I wouldn't expect this to be any kind of long-term thing, but I think Splice just said, let's just get someone who's, not going to cause waves, who's a good, personality in games and in pressure situations, and just see what he can make for us.
Next up, Navi have withdrawn from ECS, citing a busy schedule, as we alluded to.
Yeah, everyone's got a busy schedule. And also, I think on top of it, Guardian being injured, they're trying to really reduce the workload they have to put him through leading up towards E-League, I would assume. And then obviously the next major. So, it just makes sense. And this is kind of where we're going to get to the point where some of these Tier 1 teams have to pick and choose very, very carefully how many and which events they attend and which ones they don't.
That's it for this week. I'm Jack Westerman, joined by Jason Moses O'Toole.
And someone will be back for PopFlash next Wednesday. Don't know if it'll be me, but it was nice being back.